Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. What is happening right now in Crimea is nothing short of a geopolitical earthquake. The world watches in disbelief as Russia's once unshakable control over the peninsula begins to crumble under the weight of a relentless and coordinated European-backed counteroffensive. The black waves of the Crimean coast now echo with explosions and alarms as Ukrainian forces, armed with precision-guided missiles and Western intelligence, carve their way through the heavily fortified defenses. What was once thought to be Russia's most secure territory has become the epicenter of chaos, vulnerability, and shock. The significance of Crimea to Moscow has always been more than strategic. It is symbolic, a piece of land that represented power, victory, and imperial pride. Now that pride is being stripped away layer by layer, revealing a vulnerable core that the Kremlin cannot easily defend or replace. The exterior landscape of the battlefield has transformed dramatically. Where once Russian soldiers patrolled the coastline with confidence, now scorched ruins and plumes of smoke dominate the horizon. Long-range strikes have obliterated ammunition depots, radar facilities, and naval airfields. Bridges connecting the peninsula to mainland Russia have become the prime targets of Ukrainian precision missiles, cutting off reinforcement routes and isolating entire units. The Kerch Bridge, once a lifeline and a symbol of Russia's annexation, now stands scarred and crippled. Satellite imagery reveals devastating damage across military compounds once considered untouchable. Ukrainian drones, operating under the cover of darkness, strike deep into enemy territory, dismantling air defense systems and disabling electronic warfare installations. Every explosion across the peninsula tells a story of strategic brilliance and timing, a campaign meticulously planned and executed to exploit Russia's weaknesses. Inside Crimea, the atmosphere is heavy with fear and confusion. Russian command centers struggle to maintain order as communication lines falter and logistics collapse. The once stable administrative structures imposed after the annexation are breaking under pressure. Civilians rush to evacuate the coastal towns, flooding the roads toward the Russian border, fearing encirclement or counterattacks. In cities like Sevastopol and Simferopol, long accustomed to calm under occupation, sirens wail through the night. Ukrainian special units move with stealth and precision, targeting supply routes and command posts, while resistance networks within Crimea rise up to support the liberation effort. Russian officers find themselves caught between orders from Moscow and the harsh reality of a battlefield slipping out of their control. Morale among Russian troops plummets as supplies dwindle and reinforcements fail to arrive. In some areas, entire battalions abandon their positions, unable to withstand the relentless pace of the offensive. The performance of this operation has stunned military analysts worldwide. Ukraine, once seen as the underdog, has transformed into a model of modern warfare execution. This isn't the chaotic frontline push of early conflicts. It's a synchronized display of technological power and tactical precision. Western-supplied systems like the Storm Shadow missiles and long-range ATACMS have rewritten the rules of engagement. These weapons, guided by satellite and electronic intelligence, are striking critical Russian assets with unerring accuracy. Drones hover high above the battlefield, providing real-time reconnaissance that allows Ukrainian commanders to anticipate movements before they happen. The coordination between land, air, and sea elements has reached a level of sophistication that rivals even NATO operations. Every target, every strike, every maneuver serves a purpose in a larger strategy designed to collapse Russia's operational depth. The rhythm of this campaign is steady, deliberate. Safety features, if one could even speak of them in this war zone, have completely inverted. For Russia, Crimea has transformed from a stronghold into a death trap. The peninsula's geographical isolation, once seen as an advantage, now exposes Russian forces to encirclement and attrition. Defensive systems like the S-400 and Panzer have been neutralized by coordinated electronic interference and drone swarms. Even the mighty Black Sea Fleet finds itself cornered, its ships constantly shifting positions to avoid being targeted. The harbors of Sevastopol, once bustling with confidence, are now littered with damaged vessels and wreckage. Ukraine's use of maritime drones has rendered traditional naval dominance obsolete. These small, fast, unmanned crafts glide silently through the waves, carrying explosive payloads capable of crippling warships that cost billions. On the other hand, Ukraine's safety mechanisms have evolved with precision. Shelters, real-time communication networks, and encrypted data sharing between allied nations provide protection that keeps the operation resilient. The contrast is clear. While Russia struggles to defend itself with outdated tactics, Ukraine shields its mission with innovation and intelligence. What makes this operation truly unique is the unprecedented level of European involvement. Behind the scenes, a vast network of cooperation fuels Ukraine's momentum. Intelligence from satellites operated by France, Germany, and the United Kingdom feeds directly into Kiev's command systems. American surveillance aircraft circle high over the Black Sea, providing early warning data on missile launches and troop movements. European factories operate around the clock, producing artillery shells, drones, and armored vehicles that are immediately shipped eastward. This is not just Ukraine's battle anymore. It is Europe's stand against a threat that has lingered for over a decade. The solidarity displayed across borders has transformed the war into a shared mission. European defense agencies coordinate logistics as smoothly as a single unified command. The message this sends to the Kremlin is unmistakable. The era of unchecked expansion is over. The empire's reach has met a wall built not of concrete, but of collective willpower and advanced technology. The human cost, however, remains staggering. Both sides bear heavy losses, and the ground beneath Crimea is soaked in the consequences of political ambition and national survival. For Russia, every loss carries an additional burden: humiliation. The very image of invincibility that the Kremlin cultivated for years is shattering. The propaganda that once portrayed Crimea as an eternal part of Russia now rings hollow amid the footage of explosions and retreat. For the Ukrainian people, every advance is a triumph mixed with sorrow. Villages once occupied for nearly a decade are being liberated, revealing the scars of repression, displacement, and fear. Yet amid the devastation, hope flickers. Flags long banned under occupation are raised again, songs of independence echo across the liberated streets, and families separated by war reunite under the shadow of destruction. It is a costly rebirth, but a rebirth nonetheless, one that the world witnesses with awe and empathy. Economically, the consequences ripple far beyond the battlefield. Russia's defense budget, already stretched thin by sanctions, can no longer sustain the scale of this conflict. The cost of maintaining supply chains to the front lines grows exponentially as infrastructure collapses. Fuel shortages, communication failures, and transportation breakdowns paralyze operations. The global oil and gas markets react violently to every report from Crimea, reflecting the uncertainty that grips the region. Meanwhile, Ukraine, though battered, receives continuous injections of financial and logistical aid from its allies. European and American funding ensures that ammunition, vehicles, and humanitarian supplies continue to flow uninterrupted. In a war measured not only by military strength but by endurance, financial stability becomes a weapon in itself. Russia's economy, weighed down by sanctions, corruption, and isolation, falters under pressure, while Ukraine's resilience strengthens through solidarity and external support. Politically, the implications of Crimea's potential liberation are monumental. For Vladimir Putin, losing Crimea would signify not just a military defeat, but a collapse of the narrative that sustains his leadership. It was Crimea's annexation in 2014 that solidified his image as a restorer of Russian greatness. To lose it now would expose the fragility of that illusion. Inside Russia, discontent brews quietly. Mothers of fallen soldiers demand answers. Opposition voices grow louder despite censorship, and even loyal oligarchs begin to question the cost of this endless war. Internationally, Russia's allies hesitate. The silence from Beijing grows colder, and other nations that once traded diplomatic favors now distance themselves from a sinking power. Ukraine's success, on the other hand, redefines the European security architecture. NATO's unity, once doubted, now stands proven. The idea that a determined nation with external support can resist and even reverse invasion becomes a living example for the world. Technologically, this campaign represents a turning point in warfare. The integration of artificial intelligence, real-time satellite coordination, and autonomous weapon systems has changed how battles are fought. Drones no longer simply scout, they attack, defend, and relay intelligence with machine precision. Digital warfare complements the physical front lines as cyber attacks paralyze Russian communications and disrupt command networks. The traditional separation between air, land, and sea has blurred into a unified digital battlefield. This evolution favors Ukraine, which adapts swiftly and leverages the most advanced Western innovations. Russia's reliance on outdated Soviet-era hardware and centralized command structures makes it sluggish and predictable. The war in Crimea, therefore, becomes a live demonstration of how agility triumphs over mass, how precision replaces brute force, and how information dominates territory. The moral dimension of this struggle cannot be ignored. For many Ukrainians, this is not just about reclaiming land, it is about justice. Crimea's annexation marked the beginning of years of oppression, where dissent was silenced, culture was suppressed, and people disappeared without trace. As Ukrainian forces advance, stories of imprisonment, forced conscription, and fear emerge from liberated areas. Each reclaimed town bears witness to resilience and suffering. The world, often desensitized by constant headlines, rediscovers the human cost of occupation. European nations, witnessing this firsthand through the influx of refugees and testimonies, find renewed purpose in their support. The moral clarity of Ukraine's fight stands in stark contrast to the moral decay of an empire built on coercion. It is a confrontation not just of armies but of values, freedom against domination, truth against propaganda. The pace of events accelerates as Ukrainian forces close in on key objectives. Russian air defenses, overwhelmed and exhausted, struggle to intercept incoming strikes. Commanders in Moscow issue contradictory orders, revealing the confusion at the highest levels. Reports suggest panic in the Russian naval headquarters as evacuation plans are quietly drafted. Meanwhile, Ukrainian engineers work tirelessly to maintain supply routes and bridgeheads under fire. The coordination between infantry, armor, and artillery achieves a level of precision unseen in earlier phases of the war. Every success on the front line translates into momentum in diplomacy. European leaders convene emergency sessions to coordinate the next wave of support, while international observers prepare to monitor the post-liberation stabilization process. The narrative is no longer about survival, it is about transformation. Crimea, once the symbol of conquest, now becomes the symbol of resistance and renewal. As the fighting intensifies, the world holds its breath. The possibility of escalation looms large, but the determination on both sides leaves little room for retreat. Russia's attempts to reassert control through airstrikes on Ukrainian cities fail to break morale. Each missile that falls only strengthens the resolve of a nation that refuses to surrender. The global media captures every moment. The explosions lighting the night sky, the soldiers raising their flag amid ruins, the civilians emerging from shelters with tears of relief. The contrast between destruction and hope defines the essence of this campaign. It is brutal, it is tragic, but it is also historic. Crimea's future will determine not only the fate of Ukraine, but the direction of an entire era of international politics. In the end, as dust settles over the battered landscape, one truth emerges unmistakably. The empire that once seemed eternal is no longer invincible. The myth of Russian dominance has been shattered not by overwhelming force, but by strategy, courage, and unity. The combined will of nations and the unyielding spirit of a people fighting for their homeland have rewritten the story of this war. The cost is immense, but the meaning transcends it. The liberation of Crimea, whether achieved today or tomorrow, stands as a testament to human endurance against tyranny. History will record this moment as the point where the tide turned, where resistance became victory, and where the world saw an empire crumble under the weight of its own overreach. The echoes of this battle will shape generations to come, reminding humanity that even in the darkest times, the desire for freedom burns brighter than any weapon, any wall, or any empire that dares to suppress it.